Welcome back to Talking Story. My name is John Minton, and right away I think you guys can see that we are in a little bit of a different location. If you're joining me for the first time, you're going, what the heck are you talking about? The green screen is not here. We've set up a second video location here in my Fortress of Solitude, and that means some very important channel news for us. It means that we're going to try and start putting out 3 videos a week as opposed to the 2 that we've been doing. Now, why are we going to do that? It's definitely not because that there is a groundswell of outcry for more videos. It's absolutely positively for selfish reasons. I am enjoying so much spending time with you and talking about books, and this is the time of the weekend for me, kind of getting towards the end of a Sunday. I start thinking about the week coming up and everything I have to do, and the stress might start building up a little bit, and I start to maybe get a little bit anxious about the week coming up. So I just wanted to include in my Sunday evening schedule some time where I just stop, take a deep breath, spend some time with the people that I've loved spending time with, talking about books, checking in with you guys, seeing where you're at, maybe crack open a nice cold beverage, slow down, and just enjoy ourselves a little bit longer before we have to start that new week on Monday. So through our regular 2 videos through the week, guys, if you want to, in the comments, hit us up with anything as far as a question you have for me of any kind. I'll try and get to it. If you have suggestions, if maybe we could start talking to some other booktubers, maybe we could use this location for a lot of different things. So this is just hopefully a nice stepping stone and part of the channel that we are building together, growing. So let's go ahead and start off with where I'm at with what I'm reading in the week. I have cracked open and started The Way of Kings, and I am a good, I'm going to say 950 pages in there, which means I still have hundreds of pages to go. This has been a nice doorstopper volume to slow down my roll of reading this month, but there is so much to like about this, and so many questions I have for the Cosmere catch-up. So for sure, we'll be doing a full breakdown and review this coming week. And I really can't wait to see how Brandon Sanderson sticks the landing or misses the landing. I suspect to Sandra Lynch, and I suspect he'll stick the landing. But wow, I don't know of a book that has been 1,200 plus pages that has left me with this many questions as opposed to that many answers. So I'm thinking that's a good thing that this is going to be 10 books long. So there's that. As far as questions, there has been, and no more than my own, questions of when I am going to get to the Sun Eater saga, X Factor, Inmal. You guys, you don't want it any more than I do. I guarantee you, I absolutely want to be reading this book. I have looked at my reading schedule. I have committed to a buddy read. It's the end of a trilogy for Daughter of the Empire. I have to wrap up the trilogy of The First Law just because I have to see how that ends. It's my birthday read, so next month's full month of great birthday reads that I have lined up. Not that this wouldn't be one, but we all took a vote, or people voted, and the winner was the Warlord Chronicles. So I got that, and I made a commitment to cover one unpublished book a month, and I've already let the author know that I'm going to be reading that next month. So this is another pretty good chunky, not 1,200 pages, is it? It might be. No, it's like 7 or 8. And then as far as squeezing it in October, the month after, that's creepy read season for me. I've got a whole bunch of creepy reads or spooky reads or scary reads set up, and I don't think this qualifies. Can you guys sell it to me as a horror book? I don't think you can, and I got such a big stack built up anyway. So the absolute fastest I can get to this is November, and my pledge, my hand to you, this will be on the November stack. It will be read November. I will start this before the end of the year, and November is the absolute quickest I can get it in there. So, guys, I just wanted to let you know I am planning for it. I'm with you. It's coming up. Other questions. When I very first put on my first video, and it was my introductory to the channel video, And I kind of went over when I was much younger living in LA. I was a part of a really vibrant book community, and there was some great specialty stores, Dark Delicacy and Dangerous Visions, that had signings all the time. And I was hanging out at those. And I've had a lot of interest in that very first video put out there about, wow, we'd love to see some of these signed books and things. So I just, before I sat down, I went ahead and pulled a couple things down that I just want to share with you guys. And let's see, Michelle Wren and I think Shelf Centered and some other folks have mentioned, like, wow, I'd really love to see some of that. So I got a little stack here, and these are things that I would consider masters. These are masters that I was lucky enough to meet. And right off the top here, this is not a book. This is an actual character, and try not to get a glare on it there. This is an actual character sketch by Clive Barker. Now, when Clive Barker was just starting out, kind of before he became Clive Barker, when he was just starting out, if you stood in line with like a canvas like this, you could hand it to him, and he would actually do you a sketch and hand it back to you. And he could do that and still have time to talk, because the lines weren't crazy, guys, when he first started out. The people that were there, I hit a couple signings, and one I hit in Forbidden Planet, one I hit at, I believe it was Dangerous Visions. And, the guys there, everyone in the splatterpunk movement, David Scow and everyone that lived in LA that was a splatterpunk writer would come out to see, the writer of the Books of Blood, and he was always a very well-dressed British gentleman, just took the time with everyone, was so pleased that everyone had come out to see him, would take the time to do you a sketch. And as he became very, very well-known and very famous, Clive Barker could no longer give people sketches, not even inside books. But I was lucky enough to be there towards the beginning and have this that hangs on my wall, and I look at it every once in a while and remember those days. This I would consider Anne Rice a master or mastress, a master of the Gothic horror, and this was, let's see, signed in 1988, and she got to the point where she couldn't do signings at all because of the turnout. And I remember the line for this was crazy, and what a lovely, genteel Southern lady. Of course, was all in black. Just gorgeous dress, gorgeous manners, gorgeous lady that took the time with everyone that stood in line. And the signing, I will never forget, was scheduled for a certain time to a certain time, and there was so many of us there. And she would not leave until every one of us had gone through and had time to speak with her and get at least, I think they had to come out and keep telling us, like, the amount of books you could come in with would go down and down and down. By the time I got there, I think it was down to like 2 or 3 books. And it was when this book was first released, and I read Interview with the Vampire. I read Vampire Lestat. When they first came out, paperback in high school. What I did with those, who knows? I was a crazy kid. Didn't hold on to them, but I got this signed when it first came out, and I will never forget meeting Anne Rice. It seems like more and more booktubers are starting to find and get into Robert McCammon, and I couldn't be happier. One of my favorite wild-eyed Southern boys. And everyone out there is now saying Boy's Life is their book of the year, or a great read, or Swan Song. And yes, absolutely, these are 2 of his best. There are so many more, and I chose this book off my shelf because I'm going to start championing this one. If you're looking for a thriller, this is like a 1980s action adventure on the road thriller with a female villain that rivals Annie Wilkes from Misery. She may take the place for me. This is absolutely pulse-pounding, fast, fun, amazing. Let's see, I got this signed in 1990. And I've met Robert McCammon on several occasions. Such a great guy, such a great Southern boy. He's one of my favorite Southern authors, and I'm so happy he's getting a lot of love with BookTube lately. This is the next book. If you've done Boy's Life, if you've done Swan Song, grab this one. It's a little bit different. It is that thriller that I'm telling you, if you think that, like, Hunt for Red October or Die Hard is like your favorite action flick, this is in that vein. You will love it. Another master, Octavia Butler. Now, the night she did a signing and I went to, I believe it was a Dangerous Visions, she took the time to talk to all of us like a class. We all hung out there, and she just stood before us before we lined up for books to be signed, and she told us about her journey as an artist and her journey, a lot of her personal family life and what it was like to be a woman of color writing in the genre at the time she started, and how she found her own voice through that as opposed to trying to become the voice that people would expect her to be. And she was such an amazing lady, and I was so happy to have met Octavia Butler before she left us. And this was a great night. It was one of those nights at a signing where she spent the time with us, and I just left completely energized for having met that person. This is a really great. This was a signing that I went to again at Forbidden Planet, and this is actually signed by Neil Gaiman and Sir Terry Pratchett. And this was at Forbidden Planet, I believe, as well in Los Angeles before they closed it down. And what a great, I've been to several Neil Gaiman signings there. And the one I remember most was before he was Neil Gaiman, man. It was for a Sandman comic signing. And he was showing up there. And they had had a stack of issues. And they were opening up the front cover and tearing out an insert out of the comic and then taping it up on the desk he was going to sit at, because that insert had like a whole character breakdown, and they were just rip, staple, put it up. And then there was this very unassuming guy standing right next to me. We were all there early waiting for the signing, and he was standing right next to me. It's like, oh, I don't think you should be destroying those. And it was Neil. He was just standing there with us watching this happen. And it turns out, like, when they published that comic, it was supposed to be, they had decided to do like, right on the inside cover, they decided to do the American Cancer Society give free space to. So there was very, very few of this actual issue left that they were just destroying to use that character breakdown that they had swapped out at the last moment for the American Cancer Association. And Neil was standing there watching him do it, thinking like, those aren't even supposed to be out. How'd you get that big stack of comics? And he was just standing there amongst us like it was before Neil Gaiman was Neil Gaiman. And juxtapose that to the last time I went to a Neil Gaiman signing. It was at the Frank Lloyd Irwin Center, I believe, in Austin, with 20,000 people just watching the man read, and then to those of weary souls that would line up afterwards to get a book signed. So what a artist journey he has had, and I was kind of there at the beginning, so it was really cool. And I'm so happy to have this signed by both writers now that Sir Terry has left us. And I couldn't do signings from that time without something. This is my copy of Mephisto in Onyx, signed by Harlan Ellison. I couldn't do signings from that time without something from Harlan. Harlan was a co-owner of Dangerous Visions bookstore, and that's why it had its name, because the short story collection that he had edited was called Dangerous Visions, and then the second one was called Dangerous Visions again. So the bookstore was called that from his book title that he had edited, and that book title was short stories that were really going to push the edge. And he was, God, what an amazing character this guy was. I loved hanging out with them, and if the store needed a boost, this is the guy that would come down. He would sit in the front window of a store with a typewriter, old school typewriter, and everybody would come in and pay. Sometimes it was like $100, $200, even up to $500, and you would buy a letter from the alphabet, and you could choose any mythological beast that letter that you bought would start with, and he would sit in that window and he would write a short story for every letter of the alphabet, and then they would go down the street and they would make photocopies, and they would hand everyone out that had bought a letter a copy of all the short stories. And he would do crazy things like that. And not long after his heart surgery, he would come and hang out at the store. My best friend worked at the store, so I was always at the store too. And Harlan would hang out because he would want one or the other of us to run down the street and get him chili dogs from Pink's, because his wife wouldn't let him have any of this after he had his heart surgery. Just one of the guys, man. One of the guys to hang out with. Such a great person. Getting to know him. That's how I got invited to Alice in Wonderland at his house eventually. And spending time with Harlan was truly, truly magical. And he never had one of his tirades anywhere near me because I always went and got him hot dogs. So I always did what Harlan asked. So I never saw that side of Harlan. Oh, you can't talk about masters, guys, without Ray Bradbury. And I've got the Illustrated Man signed by not only Ray Bradbury, but William F. Nolan, who wrote the introduction to this version. And what an amazing gentleman. He came, he was very late in life. He was completely in white. He looked like the good humor man of speculative fiction. He was in a wheelchair, but he still was amazed and enamored with how many of us had come out to hang out with him that night. It was just the most humble, unassuming presence, giving and warm, from the guy that wrote Something Wicked This Way Comes, from the guy that wrote Martian Chronicles, from the guy that wrote... I mean, I was introduced to Ray Bradbury in junior high when I had to read the Velt in my textbook. The dude was in textbooks. That's how much he had moved the needle in this type of literature. And here he was, just couldn't believe how many people had come out to see him that night. And thinking about masters, I should have grabbed this other one up here. Where is it? Well, I'll have to. There it is. Hold. All right, look at this. I had to talk about unassuming, right? So, all right, I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. Signed by Richard Matheson. Why was Twilight Zone so amazing? Because of writers like Richard Matheson and Charles Beaumont. This all-time classic, and he was not even there for this signing, guys. He was hanging out because the signing was for his son, Richard Christian Matheson, who was just starting to write and had written a collection of short stories called Scars and Other Disfigurements, I believe it was. And he was over there and just with his son in the corner and could not believe that me and a couple other people recognized him and had some things for him to sign, hoping, because we were hoping he would come with his son. And sure enough, he did. What an amazing gentleman, just there with his son that night. And I got a copy of his son's book as well, and allowed me to get a signed copy of this, one of the all-time classics. So... well, that's just a few things that I grabbed from my library, just thinking off the top of my head before I sat down, guys. I'm so glad that you kind of, at the end of your week, slowed down and hung out with me for a while. Again, leave any questions in the comments here. Leave any questions in our next couple videos coming out in the week. And if it's something I can answer, I will get to it. I will absolutely enjoy talking with you and spending some time before we dive into our week again. So cheers, everybody. Let's have a great week. Let's have a great reading week. I'm going to be finishing up the rest of Way of Kings. Whatever you're reading, I hope they stick the landing for you, and I hope you have a great reading week and a great week just in general. So thank you so much. Like, subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out and spending a little time with me here on Talking Story.